and just protect the flora and the fauna. Because without the cultural resources, an entire race of people would no longer exist. Good to meet you. Thank you for working for us.
A pleasure.
Mahalo.
Thank you. I'd like to thank you for coming over. Thank you for sharing with us. You know, you folks had some proposals that you folks had before you folks something about the uses that you would like to see, camping areas, parking areas, and stuff like that. Can we?
Yes, that's like the next one down.
Okay.
We had hiking, biking, fishing, the parking lot destination improvement, which was accomplished, the water sports, and obviously with no water safety services provided, and other low-impact uses. And because of again, one of the key issue that we've always been addressing, because of how our committee was born out of all the trouble between the user groups and the DLNR, was access. And what came out of all of our meetings was that there needed to be go back to one main road designated through there. Not a paved road, but the same four-wheel drive road, but at least kept in a condition so that it could be used in the wintertime when the guys want to go out and fish. And so they wouldn't be tempted or forced to make their own roads across the area because of mud holes. So one main road, and then off of that main road, just to have a limited number of designated side roads, spurs, that would go down to the waterfront, down to the beach. And at the end of those, a designated area with rocks around it, where to park, so that we keep the vehicles, keep the trucks, and the Jeeps and all that stuff from going all over on the sand dunes and going over here and going over there. So that was the best way to still allow access and yet control it. So that was one of the big pushes that we came up with, the big recommendations, that the next thing to do from that point was to go out there and to mark, we knew where the main road was, but to mark out the side roads that were going to be kept, and then the ones that were going to be let go back to brush and wild stuff. And then, the other things we came up with were just sort of obvious stuff. Education and public relations, to get positive media coverage of what was going on out there, to do interpretive events out there so that people would understand the environmental significance, the cultural significance, the archaeological significance of the Kaena area. And to get signage for interpretation and restrictions. We've got some signage up at the parking area, and getting that parking area in and cleaned up, I think, was a good accomplishment. And that helps sort of set the tone for the area. It doesn't look now like it's a place to go abandon your vehicle. And it looks like, okay, somebody's paying attention to this place. There's a trash can out there and all that. And then development of a pamphlet for use by the ambassador. That's sort of got stuck somewhere in the machinery, and I don't think we've ever come up with that. And then education for primitive area procedures, low impact camping, human solid waste removal by area users. If you're going to have camping and you're going to have a wilderness area, there's not a lot of toilets, and having all that toilet paper flying around the place was not exactly part of the project.
Going on the camping thing. Kalawao Valley has a problem. They allow 80 permits, for any time, at any time, right? And what's been happening is that some people have been taking these permits and actually, I guess, running their own little tours to the valley. Well, that won't be happening here at Kaena Point. There will be some kind of system set up so that, these people won't be able to get these things. Like if I'm having my friend come in from New York next month, what they'll do is they'll go up in there and they'll get that permit for that individual who'll be coming in on that time. They won't be, because you folks will be allowing camping permits, yeah? So is there any way we can kind of keep that at one minimum?
On that issue, like that is one of the things that definitely we want to get input from the community, because there's a wide opinion on that. And mainly the campers are the fishermen who want to watch their lines at night. And almost 100% are the fishermen. So that's who the campers are.
Well,
And it was-
tourism is camping too.
So maybe,
You know, right now, what we recommended, the recommendation that we came up with, was that there was nothing. So people were just going out there and parking, so there was no control, there was no knowledge of who was out there or whatever. So what we said is, okay, let's have still trying to keep it as loose as possible for the guys to come fish and do that, but we have a sign-in where by signing in, that was your permit, at the entry. So that was the solution that we had come up with for the immediate future. And then I don't think that you can decide exactly what's going to happen 10 years down the line. It depends how much demand there is. And at this point, there's not that much demand for people to camp, just the guys that are out there fishing.
Well, I think the local people have that connection, but to have this group coming in from around the world and not being sensitive to our culture and the meaning for that area may not be that sensitive. Yeah, so, but this may be a foothold then for them. Maybe we should just allow camping and just allow fishermen to just spend the night that they normally have and not call it camping. Maybe that may be a way of keeping that so that in the future, they cannot use this as a foothold to get into an area that, for me personally, I wouldn't want to see them in there unless they can, unless they can have the same respect that I have.
Yeah. That's a good point. I don't know how to solve that one.
I think that the Waianae Police Department, I don't know what it is today, but when this talk first began, the Waianae Police Department was adamantly against access through that area because of their inability to protect people once they get into that reserve. And so I don't know if they've changed their mind or what will happen. One of the things is that once you begin to put in an infrastructure in an area, you're dead in the water already. That's going to turn into basically what we have at Kiavola, which is a fancy toilet house all bassin, right? So, and that will even add worse to the area. I like the permitting idea personally, but I see that off the top of my head, and just because people want to use things, do we need to accommodate them?
Well, that was, again, if you need to understand the structure of our committee. Our committee was made up of user groups and environmental groups and community groups from representatives from the North Shore. So it was a give and take. I think if the North Shore community and maybe environmental groups had been the only ones in the committee, they would have said, okay, no camping without going down and getting a permit. They had a limited amount of permits. But that's not what came out of it, because it was a compromise.
A few weeks back, there was a canoe race from Haleiwa to Pukai. And so I had the privilege of going out to Kaena on my small little boat. And I was observing the fauna that was growing there. You could see it. It looked really nice. But I was very aware of the potential for serious injury because of the way that the waters meet together at the point. Like that, they go like that, and the canoes was going around the rock. Some guys brave, they go through, but I thought that if that was going to be open up for recreational activity, one assumes, well, that includes what is it, jet skis and other kind of activities. Now, how would that be managed? I mean, the state would be facing a horrendous liability. No, you don't. When you open up Park TS,
Yeah,
No, the jurisdiction for the water, once we leave the water line and are in the water, that crosses, that you leave the natural area reserve, at least at the very point. Once you get into the water, it's a boating issue.
No, but I think the point is, if I could, is that,
bureaucrat, Betsy.
I think she listened to me too much. I think the point is, if something we don't want there, we shouldn't let it get started. Because once it gets started, it's impossible almost to stop it. So I think that's why, like I said, if we're square zero, we go square zero. But if we, as all the communities and people decide we don't want that type of stuff, we have to make sure it doesn't get started, because it's almost impossible to stop it once people do it.
I think the thrust that came out of our group was that the Kaena area, and now I think with the term is coastal reserve. The Kaena Coastal Reserve is basically a wilderness park, okay? And that means limited access, almost no type of infrastructure, and just with an emphasis on preservation.
I must admit, the department, I think, is struggling because we don't have a puka to put this in. You know, the Natural Reserve is pretty focused on, you know, not having many people, and some people don't like that. You know, you talk to Ralston, he doesn't want to come to this community and say the word park, because that perceives that. Yeah. But I mean, but that's perceived as something that's built up. You're asking people to come in, and I think we're hearing loud and clear that we want it to keep it like it is. It has some use, but in more of a wilderness. And so I think the coastal reserve is something where, but there isn't like there's not a bureaucratic puka, right, that this fits exactly in right
Because
now.
on the way down, from the Mokalia side anyway, there's a whole bunch of, there's a city park, and then there's a de facto state park, even though the state doesn't want to deal with it, that runs from the city park all the way down to Camp Urban. So there's a ton of open beach and parkland for your typical kind of users, and it's a little safer than, I mean, it's not really someplace you want to go out and go for a swim. Not unless you're really good.
I used to take my children all the time to that.
Yeah, this paper that we're reading off of, we are not bound by this. In other words, these decisions that you folks are talking about and that we're getting into now, we don't have to agree at all to have camping. We can say on this side of the island, aloha, go someplace else. Because I think I agree with most of the people in this room when I say we don't want any type of foothold in there. And once you establish a foothold in there, we're done. We're done. Tourism will just follow it like flies.
I think what we're hoping is that the Waianae community's involvement will help really shore up the environmental and preservation thrust of what this committee was trying to do.
Although that's it's a point, yeah. And so you can't have something crazy going on one side and the other side have something totally opposite. So there's a real need, at least from the management perspective, is try to get both communities, what are the common values we both want, where is it we disagree, but you don't want all sorts of camping and stuff on the North Shore and all of a sudden this, because that's not how the world works. So that's why I feel like we really need to step back and make sure everyone gets their say, and we decide how we manage the whole point, because it works as a whole, it doesn't work as a half.
Has anybody been out there in the last couple of years and seen the crap that's out there? There are broken TVs, there are beer bottles, there are beer cans. It is a sin. And if you're a native and you allow that to continue, you have bought into the desecration of a very sacred area. I don't like Mahawaiani'elis coming all the time. However, I think that this is our only opportunity to at least to compromise and have input into what that happens. You know, it cannot always be, don't come in my backyard, because, you know, a lot of us didn't have TV when we were young, so we get plenty kids. So I think that we need to look at this as humbug as it is. I know where Charlie coming from. You know, that government comes, the government says this, and then we turn around and something else. The responsibility then is ours to monitor and to have input on it. If not, they're going to run with it without you. And while you're back there sucking your finger, saying, how this going to happen when it happened already?
That's why I went to the North Shore meeting that the man was so upset about. Because I felt they were already trying to do that to us.
Yeah, well.
Oh, no, that wasn't one of our hot meetings.
No, you said
Yeah, that's a hot spot.
Mike, you mentioned population, you know, increase and all of that, and places actually, you know, that people need to go to do, you know, their thing for whatever, either fishing or camping. But, you know, this brochure here clearly indicates or shows how fragile Kaena is. And, you know, most of us here on the Waianae coast, you know, we're aware of our dry conditions here. And basically, like with, you know, with the sand like it is, and the way the soil is, and the wind that pulls up all the moisture, whenever a person, you know, steps on the sand, it immediately, you know, depresses. So your body weight, actually walking over through this area, as you can see in this picture on your brochure, it shows the paths that, you know, people took, and it could be like systematically, you know, they went with a certain pattern, you know, crossing the area. So how long does it take to mend? My question is, you know, what bothers me is because of its fragile condition there, you know, whatever footstep that is made on these the grasses or the plants, how long does it take for it to repair, meaning for it to get back to its natural state? As an example, now that this care has been going on at Kaena, and from the time that you know, like say this picture was taken, is there any change? You know, can we have other pictures to indicate or tell us that we're improving, some kind of benchmark? You know, are we improving or are we getting worse? And I think maybe that concern, you know, should be made, you know, where we monitor using photos, using whatever means that we can take note of changes that occur. And sure, we're not expecting, you know, like with the dry spell so they call it El Nino. Well, we don't expect for it to, you know, die off because of these changes. But the tracks that people make, the man makes, I think we should keep a very close monitoring on that, you know, damages and so forth, besides the weather.
Mike answered that one.
Well, maybe because I'll tell you, your heart will soar. You go out there with that picture in hand, and you go look at what's on that landscape right now and there. You know, the cultural wounds probably take much longer to heal, and I can't address that. But the natural history, there's Laysan albatross, there's monk seals, there's Newell shearwaters. When I was out there, there was 3 Sesbanias left. That was it. And now there's hundreds all over the place. And it just shows you, and that was just the point, Eric, because all we did was the point. It shows you how the Aina can heal on its own, if you understand it, and you can pull away So I really encourage anyone who's not been out there to take that brochure and compare that picture and to what's out there right now. And that shows you what can happen in a short time.
But Mike,
And monitoring, there is a real elaborate, somewhere the scientist is monitoring schemes, there's transects, there's photo
And these
points.
lines, these lines, just let me clarify, those lines are primarily not foot traffic lines.
Okay.
Those lines are mostly from four-wheel drive and motorcycles. Just
Was it
going
my
out there.
husband?
John,
The old
No, not that one.
But I meant the crisscross line is looking at.
No, because these guys get the group made already
Yeah.
on the other side. You know, I really think there's two different type of situation here.
Yeah.
On that side is all sand. You come outside, it's all poly. So right now, what I'm gathering, you guys trying to find out is what kind of input the Waianae side can, you know, integrate with you folks. I would like to say this, that let the Waianae people get together and figure out what kind of movement they want to do. Because I really think there's a big difference from the poly and the sand dunes. Now, I think the Waianae people should get together and start figuring out what kind of approach should we, you know, start doing here before we even start with you folks.
As I'll just say, you know, kind of repeat what I said earlier, is that this plan was only to address the area from the natural area reserve system on back to the paved road on the Mokala'ia side. That's what we were looking at, because that was the area that was under such stress and threat of just getting to the point where there was nothing that you could do about it anymore.
So in other words, the Waianae side only starts from the washout to the point. It doesn't come beyond from the washout towards Waianae anymore, right?
No. Yeah.
Did they change the boundary again?
Well, it's their boundary, but our boundary is different. There's two boundaries.
But they're talking about what DLNR, when we sat down to define a boundary for the hotspot, we set it up from the washout on this side of the point where the cave is, on out to the point and around Mokala'ia. At least that's what we've been working on in terms of...
You're talking about the slope cave right around the point?
Right around the point.
Why is it that spot going around that way? No, I'm trying to figure out if because that's part of this site.
We were mainly concerned about the area that was being negatively impacted, was going downhill. The Waianae side has been really well taken care of, and it's good. We've opened up the page, the Waianae side is being taken care of. The side that the hotspot team, where we were trying to stop this ruining of the resource, was mostly on the Mokala'ia side and caused by the uncontrolled four-wheel drive through the sand dunes. And so we're trying to focus our energies where we could try to do something on that. So the idea of the hotspot. But definitely the whole, to manage the area, you got to look at the whole side, both Waianae side and Mokala'ia side, because they all are that coastal reserve concept.
There's a difference between boundaries. But anyway, first of all, Mr. Daly, I'd like to thank you for your efforts in what you folks are doing on North Shore, cleaning up all of it. Everybody left there and what you folks are doing and for coming here. And now I get into the DLNR. My good point, everybody's talking about the washout. What's going to happen to that washout DLNR? Are you folks going to fix it, or are you folks going to leave it like that? No, thank you.
Made it worse.
Then I'll support you on that. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Could you clarify where the line of demarcation between what you consider the North Shore and Waianae? The line of demarcation is what the state...
The North District runs... Where's the wall?
Excuse me, is there any way we can show them up this here?
Yeah. The wall's right over here. There's, on the North Shore side, there's a wall, a rock wall, and it has a little entryway through it that has a bar, so you can't get a motorcycle through it, and a couple of rocks. You can carry a bicycle through it.
Yeah, I did that.
Right, okay. That's, from that point back, is what we were addressing. Because this area was already addressed, and already successfully, because this is an old picture, yeah? This is what it
I don't think our information was changed within the last year.
No, this picture is about 10 years old.
But are you asking? No, but what I'm saying is
No, I'm
what
just
the
saying,
DLNR is saying to us that, you know, Waianae has an input.
okay,
Korea has an input.
I think there's two different definitions here. I'm just telling you what our group was doing as the Kaena Point Community Task Force, what we were addressing. You know, the DLNR has to do the whole thing. That's, they're cooling on us the whole thing, and ours was just,
You know, can I ask, because I'm,
Go there.
and again, I need to get your input. I hate to have a line, say,
Yeah,
well, this
exactly.
community only does here, because this works, Kaena Point is too special. What I would like, if you're willing, is to really have both communities look at this area, which is really, you know, to me, it's not in the state park, but, you know, really all of this area, kind of as one piece, and see where we can come together, because I'm very uncomfortable in saying, well, this line, Waianae is this, because some of the very important resources are not on the Waianae side. And I don't think you want things to happen at certain parts of Kaena Point without your input. So at least my feeling, but again, it's more up to how we work, is trying to get both communities to look at it as a whole and see where we have the common values and how to manage it. That would be my hope.
So what I was driving at is, you know, the state always underestimates the human element. You put up rules and laws, and you bring up a whole factor of input. They're going to cross over unless you have methods to police what rules you set up. You look around the whole state. You've got laws that people violate. That's all I'm saying. You know, be cognizant of the human element, especially in that, you know, that zone.
that's, you're so correct. The two main things we were addressing or concerned with when we were putting this together, one was enforcement, and two was access. You know, I mean, you can say what you can access, but if you can't enforce it, then it's meaningless. Yeah.
Okay, maybe I got a slight confusion here. A couple of days ago in the paper, DLNR proposed to do some work at Kaena Point, but the actual work is at Makua Beach. Now he's saying the washout ends at Kaena Point, but yet 2 days ago in the newspaper you're saying you're going to redo the road at Makua, and that's part of the Kaena improvements. Now, where does it end? Show me the reality. You know, does it end all the way back to Makua, to Waianae Cave, or does it go
The
to
area,
the washout?
the area designated as Kaena Point State Park goes from the boundary of the NARS all the way back to. So that's not the area that we're looking at. However, that term, Kaena Point State Park, does come.
It's confusing because the hot spot is a certain area that was demarcated.
The hot shots
And
in
if
the
we're here
whole
to
area, because that's a deep concern for this site, that whole area, all the way down from there. For the
And how do you
in the
split our
top, all the
church in
way
half?
down.
Yeah.
How do you split our church in half?
Yeah, you cannot there. The drawing has to go, the line has to come back to be
You know, when I started, actually, let me just, because I don't want to confuse this even more part. I asked Ralston, because I was going to come here, I said, Ralston, you know, can I take that old Kaena Point Park plan that you did 20 years ago, and can I rip it up in front of this community? Just to try to show that, because I know when we started the Natural Reserve, there was a new system, and someone said, well, there's a state park there. I said, well, I don't care what's there, but we got to deal with reality, what's happening on the ground. I know, and I am not familiar, and I know there's been some very contentious issues concerning the development of state parks on this side, but I think we're talking about everything where the state park ends, and it's totally unimproved all the way around the Waianae side and all the way, and if that's you know, and we can agree on what line it is, because we're getting confused now talking about what is what, but we're talking about really the undeveloped area at the end of the last developed state park, all the way around the point to the end of the paved road at Camp Erdman. That's really the planning area, and we can expand it to what point that both communities feel comfortable on.
I believe it would have to be expanded on this side, because this side, we have always can fully point down, and the sacredness of dividing the two places that would just be wrong for this community, especially the heart of here with the majority of Hawaiian people being here. It's the wrong way to divide it the way that you got it now. You need to reconsider that and include everybody. Otherwise, I see foregoing problems, because we're not only concerned with the point, we're concerned with protecting that whole area. All the EV, or just breaking up of that, it's just wrong.
And can we see you burn it? Or rip it?
Well, I was hoping someone would bring it. I was going to do something to it. I don't even have a copy.
I have one.
Okay.
Because I love you.
Okay, but
There's some good stuff in there.
Say it though.
We threw it in the wastebasket at our meeting over on the North Shore.
Excuse me, you had a question?
I mean, that's an old plan.
Yeah, I just wanted to add some fuel to what's going on. What it is, it's, you know, sharing the legends and the stories. A big part of it is that Waianae in ancient times was really connected to Waialua. Kaena was one, you know, the route to Waialua. So I think that in sharing that, then we can understand that there is a strong connection between this community here and the community there. As an example, Kawaihapai, the area there, that was where the Waianae people stopped to get, you know, get a refill of water. So the significance is Kaena, the road around it, you know, to Waialua, has always been very important to the Waianae people.
I have just one more question. We talked at the last meeting I attended there about the severe erosion problem. Several people have noted it. Has there been any progress made with the problem you folks were having over there with the erosion when they put this new cable in? Are we still fighting?
We've had a spell of very dry weather.
Thank God, but it's like right around the corner.
The problem is still there. It's, with Reuben out there, we restricted vehicle access somewhat, so the vegetation has had a chance to come back to hold back the erosion, but there's that problem still. And it, you know, a certain percentage of the problem was caused by the cable, but the problem, actually, from like a scientific point of view, the problem was as much up above the point in the Ku'u'ala area, and we're addressing that more on a larger spectrum by restricting unencumbered grazing up there, so that the vegetation can't come back and keep the large masses of eroded water, or water and sedimentation getting down to the reef area.
I think it's really going to be a time issue. The longer we can keep vehicles off of the majority of the area, you know, the more opportunity it has to grow back.
Randy, can I ask a question about that? Because you mentioned that part of the erosion was caused by grazing up above by Ku'u'ala. So what is going on with this grazing management plan up in that area? Because I got a forewarning about there's supposed to be a grazing management plan, Ku'u'ala, the Waialua side, up there. Is that going to restrict the grazing up there, or?
It will be scientifically controlled, so that they do not.
That don't mean nothing.
What is that?
The scientists brought long oceans here, remember?
White fly.
What does that mean?
It'll be monitored, so they don't
Minimize the grazing that's allowed up there?
It's gonna, compared to what type of grazing is occurring up there, it's trying to, if we had Natural Resource Conservation Service, the old SCS come up, because we're not, you know, grazing with animals, that'll call Albert, well, you know how to do it. So we're trying to get help to kind of limit what would be acceptable that wouldn't cause, you know, the problem that used to be up there when there was no control over how many grazing.
But isn't also one of the purposes to have some limited grazing to reduce the fire problem?
Yes, the fire potential.
So it's kind of trying to get the right balance when having some animals.
Because in eating grass, getting washed up, and there's no other way, that we could spend, oodles of money to hire people to mow it. But I think, when we start, once the group, gets the dynamics and addresses the erosion problem, there'll be ample opportunity, I think, on how we go about to limit that erosion. Because if the thing continue to wash in the ocean, we're not going to get nothing left for the plant to grow
One of the
on.
groups there were saying just how bad the erosion problem is over there. A lot of us are not aware of it because we live on this side, but several of the groups are extremely concerned because there is a large portion of the mountain slipping away.
And a lot of that is ending up as silt on the reef.
Excuse me, when the cable went in, did it go anywhere into the reserve?
No. No.
The one that was installed in the post
It only came down approximately 3/4 of a mile from where the paved road stops, and then it headed up over at Manini Gulch. So it came nowhere near the... So it just came to here and then headed up over the hill.
I don't know if you remember the dynamics. There was some people wanted to make the reserve bigger back in the late 80s, but the community at that point didn't seem at all ready. I remember my phone was ringing off the hook because people were upset we did what we did because people got used to driving around and did not want that. So that was also kind of a compromise as well, of trying to do what we need to do, but not because we didn't feel like people were very upset about.
I think the 90s we changed our opinion.
Yeah. With that road broken in half, we don't need it.
Yeah, but a lot of people have not changed their opinion. And one of the things that we've gone through in these 2 years of meetings is this leftover resentment by the guys that used to fish out there and the guys that didn't, but they've been told that, hey, the DLNR is going to do it to you again. They're going to fence off, wall off your fishing area so you can't get to it with your vehicle. You're going to have to walk in.
Well, let's put it this way, if they're walking over pretty easy anyway, it should have been fenced off a long time ago.
One more.
I want to throw another wrench into the pot, only because I'm an Elio. But my question is in regards to access, and for Native practitioners who need to gather certain materials out there or have ceremony, what are the parameters that they need to go through? Because what I'm thinking about is a case on the Big Island where a native Hawaiian went on DLNR land, state land. He collected some dead koa, and now he's in litigation, charged for trespassing. Is that going to happen to us native practitioners that go out there and practice our culture?
That's fine. I think actually I was subpoenaed today on that specific case. I know it quite well, and there are some circumstances. But let me tell you, because I was part of the PASH study group that looked at that, and I know. And I must admit, our resource managers are having problems in dealing with that issue. And what I tell our resource managers is, because majority of the land that Forest and Wildlife manages is ceded land. And one of our ceded trusts is for the betterment of Native Hawaiian people. And we should not...
Could you tell the governor that, please?
I'm not a political appointment, I'm a civil servant. And we need to find ways we do not treat Native Hawaiians like we treat everybody else. But there are rights and responsibilities. And there are a lot of people who are gathering that are not doing it in a responsible way, and we need to kind of get in a culturally appropriate way to begin to deal with that. The natural reserve And Native Hawaiian gathering, those laws, it's a Western law and a Native law that do not jive at all. We're dealing it with Ahi Kina'u on Maui, where the Luabai families come in and said that we have fishing rights in this natural reserve, and natural reserve says you're not supposed to take anything. And I think we all need to kind of step back and see how we want to deal with that.
All you gotta do is look at your constitution.
Yeah.
That governs the state of Hawaii, that memorializes the fact that Native Hawaiians have access rights.
And again, I'm very out of my league speaking with this in front of you, but we're trying to find a way on lands that we manage, which are our ceded lands, to be able to connect rights and responsibilities back in an appropriate way. Specifically right now at Kaena Point, you're not supposed to remove any sort of plant without a permit. That I know is probably not going to be totally appropriate based on what people are doing right now. And at least from our division, we're trying to work through that and not trying. I could tell you some things after about the specifics of that other case on the Big Island. I'm not sure that was done responsibly when people are taking 4 or 5 truckloads of wood and cutting fences and leaving them all up. And so there is a balance. And so we know we're in the middle. We know the two sets of laws don't jive. But I think everyone in the pasture group recognize rights, responsibility, and stewardship as an essential part of the Native gathering. So we need to push that forward, and those values don't bother me. I think we need more of those values because some of our western side does not recognize those values, and so there's a lot to learn.
I think that's the direction that Iliu'uokalani has taken as far as educating our own people as to what is responsible gathering.
But then in all, and even then, and again, I'm very nervous in even talking about this in front of this community, but there are certain areas that we're kapu, and the community needs to decide what those are and how that should work.
Who put the kapu on?
Yeah, I know I shouldn't have even. I tried that. And so we are really looking to work with the Native Hawaiian community to find how best do we integrate rights and responsibilities back on
Mike,
landscape.
I know that your intention is great. My lifelong experience with government, and this state government, has been one of just abuse. Uncle Harry had been diagnosed, Harry Mitchell had been diagnosed with cancer of the lungs. He went down to Maui, he went to the Papa, and he went pick up some loli for make his la'au. He was arrested and kept in jail for more than 24 hours for picking up the stupid loli, because some eager DLNR person who was not educated, while DLNR tries to educate the public, they need to educate their staff. And that's where we get the resentment towards government, if you will. This is not meant to you personally, because I acknowledge your ancestors. Without them, you wouldn't be here helping us. So I acknowledge you too. I'm just telling you that this government is just screwed to the max. I mean, they arrest a man trying to get medicine to take care of his cancer. Western concept is that he got to go doctor. Oh yeah, and if you like over there, you got to go hire one lawyer. So between a lawyer and a doctor, he's broke when they bury him. You know, and I try to make a joke out of it, but basically you take away all the BS, and that's what's happening. The department must make a sincere effort in educating their staff in the field. And that goes for whomever. I don't care what degree they got or whatever. They got scientific and educational degrees. They need to understand, while the legislature introduces bills that acknowledges and promotes medicinal variations of medicine with our la'au lapa'au, and the department is arresting us. So with respect to Kaena, I never had to go over there to get no medicine. I pay for my insulin at Kaiser. But there are people who may want to go, so we need to plan for that. We need to also plan the access that Laura is talking about. And in order to do that, we have in this community practitioners. And I think they're working with you guys for the Heiau up Mauka, up Waianae Valley. So that's very important. Very, very important. And I think that when you empower members of a community to have vested interest in an area, you don't have to hire 50 million enforcers. They now become partners. And I think that's, I talk too much, sorry.
Question, ma'am?
No, I don't. I want to make a comment, actually, and add to what Frankie said. Like it or not, today, the dominant society calls it rights. But what we're going to start with is the fact that these rights evolved from traditional and cultural practices. So we have to educate both sides to understand that these are traditional practices. Even in DLNR, your management for fisheries and for the natural resources, I see you guys going back to the alpha system, going back to the couple system. Folks use different words now, but basically the resource management for our Aina, I mean, it has to be that way. Because how could an island feed 1 million people and not be destroyed? But I think it's a two-way street. Like what Brada is trying to do is, you have to respect the Aina. It's just one of those basic, again, lessons that everybody seems to forget. Maybe I am a good, say, practitioner, and I make sure I take my opala when I leave. But 10 other guys may not, because they feel like, hey, well, they own PSA, so you can pick up the rubbish. So it's both sides where our kuleana is on both sides. But the education has to continue, like it or not. The past decision is part of our life, and we need to accept that all the laws today, and like Auntie Frankie said, look at the Constitution, is based on laws that evolved before the kingdom from traditional practices. And that's why people grumble about access. They grumble about use because we ma'a to that kind of thing, but it's the handful that abuse it that impacts the rest of us. So of course there's anger in the community when you say, oh no, now you cannot go over there. So I think it's both sides. We have to accept that responsibility for the Aina now increases with the increase in use, the increase in population. All of that gets magnified when the population increases. But I want to stress again, the past workshop, the work study, because we followed that in its entirety, and it's still not completely understood, but we need to remember the basis of all the laws today, and why they call them rights, is based on our traditional practices, and the danger for us as Native practitioners is when you have a right, it was created by law and can be taken away. So for us, that's the danger.
Good point.
I got something that might be haunting me. You mentioned that fish cannot be taken out of a reserve, and if that's so, then how would that affect me in the future?
No, this isn't we have one marine natural air reserve, and that's in the Hi'ikina area on the island of Maui. And
I'd like to speak to that.
okay, well,
The Hi'ikina reserve area, as told to me by the kupuna in that area, and that's the reason why the Luluwai Valley is testing it, is when the reserve was first proposed, they were told that the reserve would stop at the shoreline. And 20 years ago, I think DLNR needs to admit that it made a mistake. When the reserve was finally done, the reserve, in fact, did go out beyond the shoreline. And that is a major fear. In fact, I'm glad Mr. Wanako brought that up, because if he didn't, that's one of my problems with calling it a coastal reserve, because it implies that the reserves go out beyond the shoreline. Now, I know Brian, in discussing with Brian earlier tonight, he's done some preliminary survey work. In the back of my mind, I'm already thinking, what's the reason for the preliminary work being done? Is there
plans for restrictions? Is there a hidden agenda here? As a fisherman, I'd like to know up front, has it been discussed in DLNR's meetings? No.
We have had no discussion on any extension of the marine.
Because we're going to learn from Kaena.
Yep.
That when you tell us that it's only going to go up to the shore, and when the final rulemaking comes out, if it comes out beyond that, then you better be ready.
Challenge.
I think what we were looking at when we were forming the team within LNR, to look at the basic components of what was there, both ocean and land. And we didn't have much information about what resource was there and whether the resource or the reef and everything could support more. So just trying to get baseline information and begin some kind of reasonable management and whether we need to have, ways to make sure that it's there in perpetuity. That was basically
Yeah, unfortunately, we still don't have enough information. We're still trying to get with him about that. But my job was to look into areas and try to get baseline information, mostly on the mobility side. The Waianae side, I feel I can get that almost, it's calmer, so I can get that almost any time. I can get guys out there, but we try to look at getting the baseline information because, I'm sorry. We're trying to get this baseline information because of what changes may occur in the future. I always like that. I was born like that. So anyway, we're trying to get this information because, like we're talking tonight, we don't know what's going to happen in the future at the point, and it would be nice to see it improve. And if it's bad now, maybe 20 years, 10 years from now, it might be much better, and at least we'll have it documented. And basically, that's it.
I think the communities, no matter where we go in our modern times, have been burnt more than once. And as a consequence, they're very skeptical and they don't trust bureaucrats, including this old lady. But, that's part of the contemporary planning process, unfortunately, is that we must wade through a metamorphosis of understanding, and I think that you all are trying to do a good job here, and I'm very pleased with my community responding in the manner that they have. They're very patient and they're very well informed. Thank you for your manao.
Somebody else.
The last sentence in the article this morning's paper dealt with the reefs that were from 100,000 to 500,000 years old. And leading back to Mr. Isla, the coastal concept. Now, you brought out a hot issue and it ended with Bunky's article, 100,000 to 500,000, the only place in Hawaii. I'm concerned about that. This is the only place in Hawaii. This is, I don't know how to really define the words that I'm feeling right now. And the department's involved with it. We've got archaeologists there that's going to see that statement. Oh my goodness, here we got a gold mine. UH is going to come in there. I'm starting to think these worst case scenarios because of that statement that was made. 100,000 to 500,000 years old, man. Here comes a guy with a little thick.
Oh, God.
And that's from the underwater reefs up to what they said, 100 feet high or whatever it was.
Yeah. So
that's my concern. It's a fragile place, and to me, I'm a conservative, I'll admit it. And when it comes to natural resources, I've told people this. This is an island. An island can support only X amount of people with its natural resources. We don't have a water shortage. We've got an overabundance of people. We've still got the same amount of water that we had when I was a little kid running around here. It's just that we got more people, And to have this fragile place, I learned how to surf down there. My cousin just threw me in the water and said, go, And I remember how Calvula was. And to me, there's no compromise. We do it and we enforce it. And then that's what's scary too, And enforcement. We enforce it, then we go to courts and we've got these liberal judges that say, hey, get out of here. it's a whole issue, but my major concern is the last statement that was made in the article this morning about the reefs. The only place in Hawaii, and that needs to be protected if that is so. That's the first time I've been aware of that, and it was a strong statement.
Well, that's to prepare for the other study that's coming.
Well, that's what I'm alluding to.
Trying to say something.
I got a question for you, Mike. Talking about the... Too many mics in this world.
Your 2 years of talking with, I guess it was pretty rowdy with fishermen about access to Kaena Point. Was it ever thought of that if you do bar vehicle access, what you are doing in effect is possibly making it harder for these fishermen to get to the place, thereby limiting them naturally to getting out there and hopefully bringing back the resource. You understand what I mean? It's like wilderness fishing up in Alaska. So you don't get a car to go drive up a mountain someplace, you know? Why not do that here?
It's kind of like natural selection. Those who are willing to walk will fish.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. And you get a lot less of them than you can drive up there.
Because people are really concerned about getting their cars ripped off. I mean, they didn't feel comfortable in parking their car, then walking somewhere because they're worried.
Although we did have a solution for that. Camp Urban was willing to provide a certain amount of parking, and theirs is monitored.
Makua, just park your car, Makua.
Maybe you leave it.
Let's look at demographics, yeah. In the next 20 years, a lot more of us are going to be old, and we're not going to be able to carry our fishing poles to those areas. So I think we need to be concerned with that, and we also need to make some plans for that, because there are going to be many fishermen who want to go, who are going to be in their 60s and 70s and can't carry their cooler from the gate in. Okay. The other point that I want to make is I'm tired of parks being closed simply because there's some rowdy people. There are many, many fishermen. Maui is a classic example, Makena, where they just recently closed the park nighttime. Plenty of old-time fishermen who used to go out there in the evenings with their families, with their ohanas, to teach them, can no longer do that because, quote, there's not enough enforcement people. I tell you what, the problem is really simple. All of the bad behavior usually happens on weekends and usually in certain hours. So just rearrange your enforcement people's schedule to go out there and hammer the bad guys so that you don't prevent us from utilizing the area.
Good point.
I'm really interested in what Ruben is doing. The kind of stuff, I mean, that idea of natural resources, cultural resources managers who educate and enforce. Because it's education, yeah? The guys out there, Lolo, never brought up with cultural usage, Choriopala, go all over the Ahina, go all over the stuff. I know guys used to do that with the, you know, and it's still happening, yeah? Makua, all over, I mean, big problem. So there's got to be a way for not to say, oh, let enforcement take care of it. Well, what is our responsibility? And so we as Hawaiians have to have cultural enforcement, well, education and enforcement officers, and it needs to be supported. You know, whether you go out there, you're not saying you're going out there with one gun, but you get on two-way radio, we're going to talk to the guys with the, I mean, the same problem, eh, brother? With the three-wheelers out there right on top of the ahu. You're like, oh, they choked the guy, but low, eh, you know. So there's got to be a system where the agencies, not just say, oh, the state take care. You know, all our agencies and our community people, we got to activate and work on the idea of a kahu. The idea of a kahu. What is the kahu? What is the kuleana? What is our kuleana? What is the kahu relationship? You know, the kahu relationship is a deep one. That means it's spiritual, cultural, physical, all that. But those guys out there got to get educated, so on people too, but on both sides of the picture. So we need to really work on the kahu thing for all our areas, because Mokolei is our area too. Yeah, we go gather. Iliula, that's what we got to educate. We got to get, you know, because I wasn't going to come tonight because I'm tired, argue, you know, like, oh no. Yeah, all of Kaena, not all the soapbox, but we gotta, what I like to do is where we go from here, let's get down, let's start Malamana place. I see him out there, every time I go out there, he's out there spinning right on, but you see people, and I know I see him because I go to Kaena all the time for my own practice, yeah. But the stuff, with the kids, taking the kids out there, education, it all gotta be incorporated. So for me is, how do we get down and start working on solutions? Otherwise we're gonna sit here, we'll be 20 years from now, still be coming talking about the plan. Our days are, we like so. I guess the next step is where we go from here and how do we get OHA, how do we get...
No, this not OHA. The state gotta assume responsibility for the Kuleana. Every time they like shove them off to us. And then cap our resources.
I know.
At the same time.
The issue is we're all in it together. That's the issue. And we're not to say.
Yeah, but we're not the deep pockets.
I'm not saying this. We're all in it together.
Yeah.
All the organizations have to put together. And all I'm saying is not just.
I think the Makaina na, the individual Hawaiian. The individual Hawaiian, we know, we see for ourselves what happens in Makua, right near the Ahu. Right. Guys camp on either side. There is no camping in Makua. So where are your officers? They don't run them off. They're over there camping when they pick up the ukana and go. Right there by the bridge, get duru, kukapaila, and long ribbons of toilet tissue. And so this goes on all the time, and it is our own. They're riding their dune buggies on the sand, but we fight like hell not to let the Marines land. And we don't do anything. And the department doesn't do anything. We got guys down there selling drugs. I know plenty of people inside here know. And then we got to go do it. The whole issue is liability. Because we just went through this with the guys assisting the police officers and tagging for the handicap stalls. Years ago under Sunao Kido, that was before Alviron. Sunao Kido, under his administration, we talked about this kind of community policing to help. And the whole issue the Attorney General fought like heck, I forget his name, was the liability to the state. And so you got that issue, is that when people begin to take on the power or what law of enforcement, that's what they call it, that's all what they know. Then there's pilikia.
But there is another way. And what you're saying is, I think, just brings it right to the head. And that was part of the idea of getting a community task force on our side, was get the community involved so that we would have community support. So you not only would have an ambassador out there, but people would go out and help the ambassador and be ambassador's helpers, or whatever you want to call them. It's working on the North Shore now with and I forget the name of the group, but the Aloha Patrol. It's people that have volunteered, and they just wear the shirts, and they're a presence down at Waimea Bay, down at Haleiwa Beach Park, down at Sunset Beach, and it's done a tremendous job of really slowing down the break-ins in the cars and all the kind of stuff that went on. And it's all volunteer, but the DLNR doesn't have the resources, and I don't see that they're going to have them anytime in the near future to hire a lot of people to do the enforcement on Kaena, on either side. So as communities, if we can start to pool our resources and come up with some kind of structure that we can have a Aloha Patrol concept to go out and work with the ambassador on weekends and on holidays. Like you say, that's when all the problems are.
Or give the ambassador a day off.
Well, I think that if we really want to look at the whole cultural aspect, that you look at the term ambassador. What the hell's an ambassador? To the United Nations. What the guy is a konahiki, a kahu, like Eric was saying. So that right away, that signals something. You gotta watch out. You're dealing with something here from a cultural point of view. It's not like what was happening over on Kauai. You remember that hotel? They had guys with pit helmets and the whole thing like that. You see Ambassador look like? Yeah? You like doing...
Tahoe's good. Tahoe's really good.
Tahoe is the word, and not Ambassador.
One other point, I disagree that DLNR can't be every place at all times, because like a good manager, okay, a good manager staffs the workload. You know, everybody talks about running this government as a business. Well, in order to run government as a business, you got to staff the workload. Okay, we know when the problems are out there. Saturdays, Sundays. We've told the enforcement guy, the guy's ready now. 4-wheel drives on that beach. And all we get is, well, we can't be everywhere at all times. You know, that's bullshit. We got a problem. The community has said it's a priority. I don't know how many times I've called. I know Eric's called. I know Anthony's called. But I have yet to see anybody get cited for driving their 4-wheel drives on the beach at Makua.
Yeah.
Now, it seems to me like there's a certain segment of government that wants to go, okay, you guys take care of it. You know, and we have. I mean, we've talked to people. We've changed people. I've been accused of harassing people. But you know, get the guys out there to take care of the problem, because we tell you the problem is on Saturdays and Sundays, and it's not that difficult to sit on a beach and watch his truck go by and cite it. I'm tired of hearing excuses. I mean, there's no such thing as no can. Okay, so the community is willing to do it, but if the community is willing to do it and we do our duty and we call Don't Care and we give them the license plate number and the make and the model, and then next week we see the same car going back and forth, and the week after that we see the same car going back and forth. You folks have got to be willing to talk to your enforcement people and get them out there. They have to show that they're as interested in protecting the resource as the community is.
Yes, sir. Yeah, instead of taking Saturday and Sunday off, maybe they should take Tuesday and Wednesday off. And then work Saturday and Sunday so you can see them there. I mean, it's just a shift in hours. The other thing is you can call Waianae vigilantes and drop the hammer on them. You don't want that. Liability. The common sense would be shift your days off. Saturday and Sunday is not a religious, you know.
It makes a lot of sense to me, but I don't work with DLNR. Urban works with it's no secret, Kaena Cape, classic example. It's no secret that Friday and Saturday night, kids are going to be there drinking. Okay? If it was my kid, and somebody told me my kid was out there, he gives his ass a kid, because that's how I was raised. Okay? So it's not that difficult for Don't Care, and maybe cooperate with HPD, to go out there and catch those kids. And they call their parents and say, do you know where your kids are? Do you know what your kids have been doing? And then let their parents educate them. But it's no secret. I mean, so everybody goes like ostriches and sticks their head in the sand. Well, enforcement can't be everywhere at all times, but we got these problems. We know when they're happening. All it takes is a little coordination and people to switch their days off or pay them the overtime. I'll be happy to pay more taxes if these guys are going to give me something for my buck. So you've extended the hand to the community for the community to get involved, and let's move this plan forward. But we need something from you. We need a commitment, not only from the resource people, because I see the commitment in your eyes, but from your enforcement people.
Talk to the mic. Mike, talk to the camera for Michael can hear you. Mr. Wilson can hear you.
You know, lack of enforcement it just encourages more misbehavior. Simple common sense.
You know what they say to me? I'm American. I can do anything I like. That's what they say to me in Makua.
A common problem down there is the fact too that we cannot call out of there, even if we see people breaking the law. Telephones don't work. There's no communication. If you guys cannot be there We can, by the time we drive all the way back to the nearest phone and call out or where our cellulars were, fellow's gone already. Or ran over something they shouldn't have already. You guys have gotta be there when we need you there. Mr. Adams says it's true, shift somebody. You know you can't shift Mondays, because Mondays are always a holiday. So you're looking at Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Shift a couple people around. Give us the coverage we need for all of us to be better.
Okay, one of the unique aspects of working for DLNR is when every time you show up in front of the public, you need to take it all in, no matter if you have your zone of influence is not as large as your zone of concern. So I'll make sure our enforcement people know that, but I need to agree with Eric a little bit that that'll take you so far, and it'll deal with some of the issues, but it doesn't get to the heart of some of the issues that we're trying to. And at least as the resource managers here tonight, I'm trying to get a feel of what are the next steps. I sense we're not at ground zero, but we're not at step 2 or step 1. We're about at step 0.5. And I think some of the things that the North Shore has done has addressed some of the issues that need to be addressed, but that's only half. And the sum of the whole is much bigger than just half. But I don't sense yet there's a feeling of comfort to kind of maybe sit down with some members of the North Shore community and start sharing some thoughts on the whole. I'm not quite sure that there's
Are you
comfort.
sure that we should change his name from ambassador? That certainly is a massive move.
I'd agree 150%.
Okay, so we'll do that. We all agree?
Yes.
Gang?
But I can't stress enough is that these two communities have a chance to really change the model of how at least land, natural and cultural resources are managed by the state, because the government has decided they're not going to give the resource management agency the kind of resources they need. But there's some leadership that can come from this community and the Waialua community that could really change people's attitudes about how government should manage and try to take care of natural resources. And some places, I've been in some places, there's no hope. There's not a community that's together, that has common values, that agree on a lot of things. I sense both sides of these communities, I've been in enough meetings, have a lot in common, and both. And I guess I'm hoping there's a chance that we can create something new here. And what we could call it different. Ruben doesn't care what he's called. We could have, just think out of the box a little bit. But I don't want to push any farther than people feel like they're ready. So I'm just trying to get a feel.
So what did you hope to achieve tonight other than talk story so we get to know each other, which is important for us?
I think we took part of that step, and you don't know me, may not know. I would hope that that maybe everyone could come down. I know we'd like to talk about Kaena in a group at the Sustainability Summit at the end of this month, and we were hoping that maybe we could have some representatives or everybody, if they would like, from the Waianae community and some from the Mo'oplia community to sit down together and kind of put a little flesh on what the next steps may be. I don't know what they could be, but I think what I'm hearing, people do not want development. They would like to keep it as it is. We need more enforcement. We need more education on the cultural aspects. And I sense, but how do we take the next step? We go change the name. We decide what you need as a community for resources and go to the legislature and ask for it. I think Mike Wilson, that the hotspot would be a way of getting communities talking to their policy people, their legislators, because DLNR has no credibility. When we show up and ask for money, we're just another agency asking for money. But if community members decide what they want and they all agree, they probably have a little more oomph. And so maybe, maybe not, and I don't want to speak for, I know all the people we invited, half of them are not coming back, so, but I don't know. So I'm looking hopefully for more feedback on how far we could push, or we still need to sit and talk a little bit, or does Waianae feel more comfortable kind of spending more time with Waianae before they want to interchange with the Waialua
May I
community?
inquire as to what is this conference I think you call it a sustainability,
Yeah,
and it is to measure.
Mike has had a concept of, he's been really pushing the concept of sustainability. So he wanted once a year to have a sustainability summit. Last year we had one, and we brought a lot of community members, a lot of resource people, and we spent all the time telling people what DLNR planned to do. And
What
we
is
got
the PR conference?
Those were your words. But we did some evaluations. We heard a lot from the community that said, don't just bring us in and tell us what you're going to do. You should listen to what we want. So the concept this year is just taking 3 hotspots rather than all of them. We did all 24 last year, and try to move them forward. And the 3, like I said, are going to be Kaena, hopefully, Ahi'ikina, and Kaneohe Bay. And we were looking maybe as one way to bring forward is try to bring the 2 communities a little bit together and help them kind of tell us what they would like to do when we're working together.
Like, the element from this discussion is do-care. So I think you should invite Gary to, come to the meeting, or somebody to answer the questions on enforcement and what the community person, an individual could do without going through the do-care volunteer training program. I mean, what are the really practical and realistic things that we can do as also users, when we see abuses, It'd be nice to hear what do-care is thinking, or if they're going to implement the law.
Do-care will be at the sustainability conference.
It would be nice to see them.
What I suggest is the next step, going back to what I suggested at the first meeting, that we need to break down and get the equal representation. Like you say, Mr. Daly is the president of the North Shore group. We need to set up our own little group out of that so that we can be in touch with ourselves and that we have that equal representation. Because without equal representation, we're back to the same ballpark that I started out with when I came to that meeting, and we don't have anything if we don't have equal representation. And that's been my point from the beginning. We've had 2 lovely meetings. We've done a lot of talk story, but we haven't taken a step forward. The first step has to be to establish an equal group to that which is represented on the North Shore. That's the obvious step. And I don't think we can go any farther with it until we do.
Well, my concept, maybe I'm teaching out of school, is we just dissolve that group and we start from scratch. And we put people on it with both committees, whoever you decide, whatever representation you want.
Equal representation needs to be started.
Yeah.
We need to catch up to the place where they are already, or to be both sides to be equal off. And the only way to do that is through equal representation and to have the monopoly share of our communities to our representatives. The surveys and things like that, which you have previously done, need to be done over here. They need to not only be done over there, they need to be done on this side of the island. We need to have the same opportunity to answer the same and even more important questions where cultural aspects come into play here that weren't maybe considered on the other side because of the deeper roots here. We need to have the same opportunities so that this process is not tainted in any way. And that's why we have to step back and start this committee thing. If we're going to keep the North Shore group together as it is with Mike President, I have no problem with that. Mike's a nice guy and has really worked hard on this. But we need to do something for us.
I agree with you. I was a member of the North Shore Advisory Board. I came in kind of at the end of it as it was breaking up as a representative from the Sierra Club. And I agree. But I think having 2 boards is too cumbersome because it's like having a Senate and a House. You have to do joint resolutions that take forever. So in order to move it forward, a single committee would be a good idea. And the model that the North Shore Board used was a good one, where there were people that were agreed upon as representatives from the communities involved. In other words, you had so many people from the environmental community, so many people from the fishermen, because they were very vocal. You had people from the state, you had people from, we invited OHA, and one of the fellows declined. But in addition to voting members on the board, you also have people who can sit in who can provide input. And in this way, you don't exclude anybody. I think that's important because you have a lot of people that have educational interests. There are people that are interested in preserving endangered species. All sorts of the military is involved because they have a tracking station at the top of the ridge there, which could be the terminus of a hiking trail. So Just a suggestion, I'm not...
Well, I'll agree to a joint thing, but we have to catch up. We have to have the opportunity to catch up with what's already happened.
Be very careful, Charlie. We have begun on a premise that is not porno yet, because we have agreed in concept that because this needs to be divided, and it does not, in our culture at least, and somebody who may know more than me, tell me if I'm wrong, that this area cannot be divided like that and just parceled down. It's convenient. It also makes sense to a lot of people to get everybody in the room to talk about it, because there's an apprehension that some of the guys on the other side don't even know what we're thinking on this side. And so we've got to come to the table to express our views. Be careful, because the basic premise is faulty. It is faulty, and until that is corrected, I don't know how you're going to do that. So that we're all together planning, and we're teaching and learning from each other. But that basic premise is faulty.
The basic premise for their meetings, too, would be something we have to discuss, because they had a very strange rule where if you wanted to speak as an outsider, you had to break off and talk to somebody else, and then the board representative could talk for you, which was about as bizarre as I see with practice. So we need to change the whole thing from the beginning and create a more open thing. That's all it was. We were over there. We were tripping over.
You know, I think it helps put a little bit of that in perspective. I think a big part of our job with this group that we went through on the North Shore, and again, we came in under the auspices of the North Shore Neighborhood Board. We were appointed by the board to go out and form a community advisory group, try and bring in all the groups in on the North Shore Committee who were using the resource on that side and address the access issues and the whole gate thing. And at a lot of those meetings, there was so much hoo-hoo and so many people speaking out of turn and tempers flaring, and at least no bottles were thrown, but it was close. And I think that's where the impetus for the facilitator came and said, hey, wait, we got to start getting these meetings under control. You can't speak out of turn and all of that. So that there would at least be some semblance of, hey, we might get something done. We might actually sit here and move forward.
Was another surprise. Of course people are going to get vocal and upset. This is a very big issue. You can expect more of the same over here, I think. That's going to happen.
If I might, what would your recommendation be for the next step?
I would recommend that we schedule everything up to date, other than the scientific studies which will be needed later on, and the data that is gathered, and that we both agree, both communities agree, that is one site deserving of protection from all of the residents, not only me because I happen to be Hawaiian. So the Japanese fishermen, if you like, come yell at me, well, I just got to hit them. But, you know, it's an opportunity for us to share with each other. I'm getting old, so I don't have that commitment, that responsibility. I have the commitment, but these young people who are indeed practitioners, you know, they have responsibility to teach Data Mahua. But I think that then we can all sit down. Sustainability, you know, that sounds like how many hamburgers can I eat without getting sick? You know, thanks, Paul.
Help me out. Presumptuous. We would be presumptuous if we wanted to invite some representatives from the Waianae community to come meet with us, and some representatives of the Wailua community, just to begin to talk about what the next steps based on kind of that we really
I
start
think
from
that
scratch.
if you would invite the Wailua community to come, it would be this community's obligation to greet them in the manner that is appropriate and is the protocol of our ancestors, if you will. we would greet them and they would get to know us. We would greet them with welcoming chants, telling them who and what we are. You know, we might even want to feed them. But if they add coli, then we gotta eat them. No, this is our area. When we welcome, we welcome.
The first meeting was at neutral ground, that, let's say, you know,
What's neutral ground? Where's neutral ground, where you guys expected somebody was gonna beef.
You guys been hearing too much stuff.
We don't beef.
No. So, you know, you may want to